Welcome back to Grim Rebelity Logs. I am the mysterious nomad. We all have that one sanctuary, the place where the mask comes off, where the worst stop watching, and where we finally feel safe or home. But what happens when that safety is just an ocean? What happens when the locks on your doors aren't keeping people out, but locking you in with something that has been waiting for you all along? Today's log is a terrifying account of a violation so intimate it will make you check your closets before you turn off the lights tonight. If you want to keep these locks open and support the channel, leave a like and subscribe to Grimmer Melody Lax. Let me know in the comments if you live alone or if you just think you do. Stay safe. Part 1. The Phantom Roommate. It was mid-November when I finally got the keys to the place. If you have early light in the Pacific Northwestern late autumn, you know exactly what the atmosphere was. The sky was a permanent prising shade of gray, and the rain did not fall so much as it hung in the air, a constant freezing mist of soot. It curates the tighter, but I did not care about the weather. I was ecstatic. I had just moved to Portland for a freelance graphic design job and install arts. I had found an apartment that seemed impossible for my budget. It was on the second floor of a converted Victorian house built sometime around 1904. It had 12-foot ceilings, original hardwood floors that grim with a shrine, and bay windows that looked dry furbered a street lined with wet, skillable trees. Sir, the heating was spotty, and the water pressure in the shower was more of a section than a stream, but it was mine. I was letting alone for the first time in my life, and the silence was exactly what I needed, or at least that is what I told my soul. The first week was a blur of unpacking boxes and setting up my workspace. I spent most of my time in the living room, which I had converted into my office. The isolation was heavy. I did not know a single person in the city. My only company was the rhythmic rumbling of rain against the single-pane glass and the settling noise of the old house. You know how old houses are. Hey, breathe. They expanded the hit and contract in the cold. I got used to the sounds quickly. The pop of the radiator, the creak of the floorboards in the hallway, the sudden shudder of the pipes when the neighbor downstairs turned on a faucet. It was duck brown noise. Why noise for my lily new life? The first time I noticed something was wrong, it was so insignificant that I feel spit even mentioning it now. It was a Tuesday morning. I walked into the kitchen to make coffee. My eyes still half glued shut with sleep. I went to the refrigerator to grab the almond milk. I have a very specific system for my grocery. It is a habit from living with messy roommates for years. Dairy and drinks go on the top shelf, leftovers on the middle, vegetables in the crisper. I reached for the top shelf, but my hand grabbed it in the air. I blinked, confessed. The almond milk was sitting in the door of the fridge next to the condiments. I stared at it for a long time. I distinctly remember buying it the night before, pouring a glass, and putting it back on the top shelf. I shrugged it off. I was tired. I was stressed from the move. Maybe I had sleepily put it back in the wrong spot during a late night wait rig. I poured my coffee and forgot it. 2 days later, it happened again. This time, it was the toilet seat. I am a man, but I was raised by a single mother and 3 sisters. Putting the seat down is muscle memory for me. It is automatic. Yet, when I walked into the bathroom around 6 in the evening, the seat was up. I stood in the doorway, a cold prickle of unease running down the back of my neck. I left alone. I smelt any guests. The landlord had not called to say maintenance was coming by. I kicked the front door. The dibble was angered. I checked the windows, painted shut. I reasoned with myself. Maybe the mechanism was loose. Maybe the vibration from a heavy truck passing outside casted a mouse up. It sounded ridiculous even in my own head. But the alternative was that someone had been in my apartment. And since the doors were locked, that was impossible. By the second week, the atmosphere in the apartment shifted. The silence stopped feeling peaceful and started feeling heavy envy, like the air pressure before a thunderstorm. Then came the smell. It started faintly, a waft of stale, cold tobacco smoke. It wasn't the smell of someone actively smoking a cigarette. It was lingering, sour odor that sticks to old cloths or upholstery. I would catch a whiff of it in the hallway, bedroom, in the bedroom, in the bathroom. Then it would vanish. I called the landlord, complaining the downstairs must be smoking inside. The landlord told me the building was strictly non-smoking and that the woman downstairs was a 70-year-old retired electrician. He suggested it was just the smell of the old woodwork or maybe drafts coming in from the street. I tried to ignore it. I bought plug-in air fresheners. I burned scented candles until the air was thick with the smell of lavender and vanilla. But underneath the artificial sweetness, the rot was still there. It was biological. It smelled like sweat, unwashed skin, and cheap wet tobacco. I started feeling like I wasn't alone. It is a primal instinct, something left over from when we were prey animals hiding in caves. You know when eyes are on you. I would be working in my desk at 11 p.m. and the hair on my arms would stand up. I would spin around in my chair, expecting to see someone standing in the doorway, but there was nothing but the empty charcoal way and the shadows cast by the streetlights outside. I started talking to myself out loud just to fill the void. You are cracking up, man, I'd say to the empty room. You are just lonely. Get a grip. But the house was listening, and it was getting ready to answer. Part 2. The logic of insanity. Things went from unsettling to untenable on a Thursday night. The rain had picked up, turning it to a full-blown storm that lashed against the siding of the house like gravel. I went to bed early, around 10:30 p.m., exhausted from a deadline I had just met. I locked the bedroom door. That was a new habit I had developed. It made no sense if someone was in the apartment. A flimsy interior lock won't stop them, but it made me feel slightly better. I woke up at 3:15 a.m. I didn't wake up groggy. I woke up instantly, my eyes snapping open, my heart hammering against my ribs. The room was freezing. I am not talking about a draft. I mean it was ice-box cold. I could see my breath misting in the darkness, illuminated by the orange glow of the streetlight filtering through. I sat up, clutching the duvet to my chest. The window across the room was wide open. The curtains were whipping around violently, snapping in the wine-like flax. Rain was pouring in, soaking the hardwood floor and the vintage rug I had bought just days before. I froze. I knew, with 100% certainty, that I had locked a window. It was a sash window, painted shut with layers of old gloss. I had struggled to open it the day I moved in and had given up. It requested efficient force to life. I scrambled out of bed, slammed the window shut, and engaged the latch. I stood there, shivering in my boxers, staring at the wet floor. Had the wind walnut even? Impossible. The latch was stiff. Someone had to physically turn it and left the sash. I grabbed a baseball bat I kept in the closet and did a sweep of the apartment. I turned on every single light. Living room, empty. Kitchen, empty. Bathroom, empty. The front door was still double locked. I sat on my couch at 4 a.m. wrapped in a blanket and Google carbon monoxide poisoning. I had read stories online about people hallucinating, moving objects, and losing time because of gas wicks. I'd seemed like the only logical explanation. I was poisoning myself. I was the intruder. The next morning, I went to the hardware store and bought 3 high-end carbon monoxide detector. I placed one in the kitchen, one in the hallway, and one next to my bed. They all read 0. The air was clean. That afternoon, the gas lighting reached a breaking point. I was getting ready to head to a coffee shop just to be around other human beings. I grabbed my wallet and reached for my keys, which I always kept in a small ceramic bowl on the entryway table. The bowl was empty. I spent 45 minutes tearing the apartment apart. I checked the couch cushions, the bathroom counters, the pockets of every pair of pants, and I was on the verge of tears. It was that specific. Hot freshen it makes you want to scream. Finally, I went to the kitchen to that an ice pack for my head, which was throbbing. I opened the freezer. Here, sitting on top of a bag of frozen peas, were my house keys. I stared at them. The metal was frosted ever. I picked him up, and the icy burnings in my palm felt like a slap in the face. I did not put them there. I would never put them there. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being messed with. That night, the fear turned into a cold, hard resolve. I needed proofs. I couldn't go to the police and say, "Officer, my keys were in the freezer." He would allow me out of the present. I needed evidence. I downloaded a sleep recorder app on my phone. For those who you don't know, these apps are designed to track your sleep cycles, but you also record noise above each soul. Dus ding dus able level 2 taps level 2 tings al nu. I set the sensitivity too high, plunged my phone into the charger on my nightstand, and placed it microphone side up. I did not sleep that night. I lay there with my eyes closed, ripping a pocket knife under my pillow, listening. The house groaned, the wind howled, but inside a room, it was silent. Eventually, session 1, and I drifted off a 5 Emma as the sun began to light in the gray sky. I woke above Ad Emma. The apartment was bright and silent. I felt foolish. The terror of the night before seemed silly in the daylight. I grabbed my phone to turn off the app. It showed a graph of the night's audio. There was a massive spike in the audio waveform at 3:42 a.m. I felt a pit from in my stomach. I had been asleep then. I tapped the play button. At first, there was just the sound of white noise to the staircase of the room. Then, I heard the rustling of sheets. That was me, shifting in bed. 10. Silence for 10 seconds. 10. A sound that made my blood run cold. It was a coo, but it wasn't my coal. It was wet, heavy, and thick with flame. It sounded like a smoker's call, suppressed and wide, as if someone was trying to clear their throat without waking someone up. Hawk. Ew. The sound was distinct, and the terrifying part was the proximity. It didn't sound like it came from the hallway. It didn't sound like it came from the apartment downstairs. The audio quality was crisp. The sound was coming from inside my bedroom. I replayed it 5 times, pressing the phone against my ear. The call was followed by a sharp intake of breath of whizzing, rattling inhalation. I looked around my bedroom. It was a simple square room. A bed, a dresser, a closet, and the window. Tier was nowhere to hide. I checked under the bed. Dust bunny. I checked the closet. Just my clothes hanging on the rack. I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone shaking in my hand. I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. Every time I slept, someone was in here with me, watching me, breathing the same air. I replayed the audio one more time. After the wheezing breath, I heard one more sound, very faint, but undeniable. It was the squeak of a hang. I looked at the closet door. It was closed now, but had it been closed when I woke up, I couldn't remember. I walked over to it slowly, the knife still in my hand. I opened it. It was a standard, shallow classic, just deep enough for hangers. The back wall was covered in a hideous feeling for wallpaper that looked like a flat art and ten been since the 1950s. I pushed my clothes aside. I ran my hand along the back wall. It felt solid, but then a draught of air hit my face. It was the smell, age, stale tobacco, and rot. It was coming from the bottom corner of the closet, right near the baseboard. I knelt down. The wallpaper there was curling up at the seam. I put my fingers on the edge of the paper and pulled. It didn't just peel a rectangular section of the drywall, about 2 feet high and 2 feet wide, shifted. It wasn't a solid wall. It was a panel. My heart hammered in my throat. I was about to find out exactly how much extra square footage I was paying for Park Tree, the hollow space. I sat there on the floor, my closet knees pulled in my chest, staring at the seam in the wallpaper. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it pulsing in my fingers. The rational part of my brain was screaming at me to get up, walk out of the apartment, and call the pulse from the safety of the coffee shop down the street, but the original part of the part that needed to neck be glued to the floor. I reached out and touched the panel again. It was a section of drywall, maybe seen inches by 24 inches, cut out with truncheon. It had been placed back into the hole and covered with a wallpaper, but the edges were curling up just to mold the cup. I dug my fingernails into the seam and pulled. It stuck for a moment, held in place by friction and maybe a bit of dry glue, but then it gave way with a soft, crumbling sound of gypsum. The panel tilted forward. A blast of cold, sun and air hit my face. It smelled of stinktown. It wasn't just old tobacco. It was the smell of unwashed, hushed human, of stale breath, of rotting apple cores and something metallic, like old penis. It was the smell of a cage. I scrambled backward, crab walking on my hands and feet until my back hit the floor of my bed. I expected something to jump out. A ant, a raccoon, a squatter. Nothing happened. The square hole gave in the darkness of the closet, a black mouth waiting to be fair. I sat there for 5 minutes, just breathing. The silence in the apartment was deafening. If someone was in there, they were incredibly still. I needed to understand the gym tribe I was looking at. I got up, my legs shaking, and walked out of the bedroom into the hallway. The bedroom was directly adjacent to the bedroom. I went into the bathroom and looked off the wall that touched the bedroom closet. It was a solid tiled wall with a vanity mirror bolted to it. I paced the distance. I walked from the door of the bathroom to the back wall. Then I went into the bedroom and walked from the door to the back of the closet. The math didn't add up. Here was a discrepancy of at least 3 feet. 3 feet of dead space between the balloon wall and the back of my bedroom closet. In a modern building, the space would be full of insulation or ductwork, but in a house built in 1904, it was just a void. A hollow cavity designed to hide plumbing or chimney stacks that were no longer in use, or to hide something else. I went to the kitchen and grabbed the heaviest flashlight in a tactical Mac light that I kept for power outages. I also grabbed the hammer from my toolbox. I didn't want to use the knife anymore. I went to something that could break bond if it had to. I walked back to the bedroom. The closet door was still open. The black square was still there. I approached it slowly, stepping on the balls of my feet to avoid creaking the floorboards. I stood at the entrance of the closet. The darkness inside the hole seemed thick, almost solid. I clicked the flashlight on. The beam cut through the gloom, eliminating dust motes dancing in the disturber. I crouched down. I held the hammer raised in my right hand, my knuckles white. With my left hand, I aimed the flashlight into the hole. At first, all I saw was wooden framing, 2x4s darkened with ash, covered in cobwebs. Then, I saw the floor of the void space. It wasn't just flooring. There was a carpet, a scrub of dirty check bed, maybe burgundy or brown, flattened and matted with grease. My breath, hitch, hop at my inhabitation. I angled the light to the left. I saw a pile of trash, empty water bottle, wrappers from granulate bars, a plastic bag tied in a knot, and then something that made me nauseous. A bucket, a white 5-gallon paint bucket with a light resting loosely on top. I didn't need to look inside to know what it was used for. Had explained the smell. I moved the light further, sweeping it deeper into the narrow, 3-foot wide tunnel. It seemed to run on fire. Length of the wall, behind the bathroom, and possibly I'm behind the kitchen cabinet. Then, the beam hit something soft. It was a sleeping bag. An old blue sleeping bag, unzipped and spread out like a mattress. It was gray with fill. Here was a pillow, yellow with sweat stains, well in a case, and on the pillow there was a picture. I squinted, leaning in closer, trying to make out what it was while putting my head inside the hole. The light reflected of the glossy paper. It was a photograph, a 4x6 print. It was a picture of me. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a picture of me sleeping. I was wearing the same gray t-shirt I had worn to bed 3 nights ago. The angle was taken from above. Looking down, my stomach turned over. Whoever took this had been standing over my bed while I slept. They had been in the room. They had taken the photo, gone back into the walls, and developed it. No, that didn't make sense. It looked like a Polaroid or a ripe print from a pharmacy. I leaned in just an inch closer, trying to see if there was anything else. That is when I saw the fort. It was tucked into the saddles at the far end of the sleeping bag, mostly covered by a pile of dirty cloths. It was bare. Hell, sickly white skin, with long yellow toenails, the cord over the tooth. It wasn't a bundle of claws. It was a person, coiled in the fetal position, facing the wall, perfectly still. I froze. My entire body locked up. I couldn't breathe. I cannot move. I was staring at a human being sleeping inside my walls, less than 4 feet away from where I chose my clothes every morning. I slowly, agonizingly slowly, began to pull back. I needed to get out. I needed to leave the apartment immediately. I would not pack a bag. I would not put on shoes. I would just run. I turned off the flashlight to avoid waking him. In the sudden darkness, the stones were broken. Creak. It listened to house settling. It was the sound of weight shifting on the floorboards inside the crawl space. Pan. A voice that sounded like rival craning together. Low, raspy, unuses. Did you bring me any waiter? Part 4. Eye to eye. I'd not scream. I think my vocal cords were paralyzed. I just scrambled backward, my heels digging you the carpet, kicking myself away from the class. I hit the door frame with my shooter and fell into the bedroom proper. I asked you a question, David. He knew my name. The rustling grew louder. He was moving. He was coming toward the opening. I scrambled to my feet, slipping on the hardwood in my socks. I dropped the hammer. It hit the floor with a loud clang that echoed like a gunshot. I didn't stop to pick it up. I ran. I bolted out of the bedroom down the short hallway and into the living room. I could hear him behind me now, not running, but crawling, a scuffling, dragging sound like a large insect moving toward Rivas. Tom, Drac. He was coming out of the hole. I reached at the front door. My hands were shaking so violently I could grip the deadbolt. I fumbled with the latch, my fingers slipping on the cold metal. David, don't leave. We were just getting to know each other. The voice was there now, at the bedroom doorway. I risked a glance back. Standing in the shadow of the hallway was a figure. He was tall, impossibly thin, his limbs looking stretched and wrong. He was wearing ragged layers of gray and brown fabric that hung off his frame, but it was his face that stopped my heart. His skin was gray, the color of wet clay. His hair was long and matted, hanging in greasy strings over his ears, but I could see them. Two bright, reflective points in the darkness. White and unlinking, he was smiling. A wide, toothless smile that split his face in half. He took a step forward. He moved with a strange, jerky motion as if his joints were rusted. I watched you sleep. David, you look so peaceful. You don't look peaceful now. I screamed, a guttural animal sound that tore at my throat. I finally got the deadbolt to turn. I threw the door open and sprinted out into the hallway of the building. I didn't wait for the elevator. I threw myself down the stairs, skipping 3 steps at a time, nearly breaking my neck on the landing. I burst out the front door of the building and into the pouring rain. I didn't stop running until I was 3 blocks away, standing in the middle of a busy intersection, gasping for air, the rain missing with the cold sweating and toll on my face. People were staring at me. A man in pajama pants and socks, holding a flashlight, screaming in the rain. I flashed down a police car that happened to be patrolling. I was hysterical. I don't know what I said to them. Man in the walls, he knows my name. He has pictures. They must have thought I was on drugs, but something in my terror must have convinced them because they put me in the back of the cruiser and drove to the apartment. They went in with gun drawn. I waited in the car, shivering under a full blanket. They were inside for 20 minutes. When the surgeon came out, he looked pale. He walked over to the car and opened the door. He didn't look at me like I was a junkie anymore. He looked at me with pity. We found him, he said, or rather, we found where he was. The intruder had fled. He had escaped through a maintenance hatch in the ceiling of the closet that led to the attic space to the roof. He was gone, but he had left his life behind. Police found a nest in the void space. He had been living here for months, maybe years, before I moved in. Maybe while the apartment was vacant. They found the bucket. They found the sleeping bag. But what they found in a cardboard box next to the mattress is what keeps me awake. It wasn't just photos of me. Here were photos of the pre-list tenant. Here were photos of people walking on the street outside. And there were journals. Dozens of composition notebooks filled with frantic, tiny handwriting. The surgeon showed me one page. It was a log, a detailed, minute-by-minute log of my life for the last 2 weeks. November 14. Subject woke up at 7 a.m., showered for 12 minutes, used the blue towel, left for coffee at I-15, left the window unlocked. I should go in and smell his pillows. November 16th. Subject is restless. He knows he feels me. I stood behind him while looking at the desk. I almost stitched his hair. He smells like cedar soap. November 18th. He bought new locks. God, he thinks doors keep people out. He doesn't. No, I am already in. They never caught him. The police dusted for prints, but the guy had fight his fingertips down. Or maybe he just didn't have any left him living in the walls like a rate. I moved out the day. I left my furniture. I left my clothes. I left everything that happened in that apartment. I couldn't touch it. I felt like it was contaminated. I live in a new building now. A high-rise made of concrete and glass. Everything is white. Everything is modern. Here are no crawl space, no attics, no hollow walls, but I still can sleep without the lights on. And every night before I get into bed, I check the closet, I check under the bed, and I checked the vents because sometimes when the building settles and the wind whistles through the elevator shafts, I swear it can hear the wet heavy call. And I wonder if he found a new world to live in, or if he followed me here and he is just waiting for me to close my eyes. So tight when you're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling of yourself as it just the house settling, or as someone shifting their weight, waiting for you to fall asleep. If you want to keep these locks open, leave a like and subscribe to Grim Rumble Locks. Let me know in the comments which story kept you up tonight. Stay safe.